In this game, we're going to see one of the greatest players of all times, Boris Gulko, getting his queen basically trapped after knight to c5. Now, don't even try. Pawn to b3 is coming, and the queen simply has nowhere to go. And guys, I wanted to go over this game because I already reviewed it and I found it very instructive. So it's a good reminder. It is a good way to reinforce what we need to do when we're down material. More specifically, in this case, that you have two strong players, and in this case, the black pieces are going to give up their queen, and the only thing they get in return is two minor pieces. So, of course, after knight c5, you guys could pause the video and try to think of how you would continue. Again, b3 is coming no matter what. So what would be the best continuation? Now, when I was reviewing this on my own, the move that came to mind was, well, b takes c5, pawn to b3, queen f1, rook takes, knight f1. So at the very least, I'm going to be getting the rook and the knight for the queen. However, Gulko explains that even though you get more material for it, it is not difficult for the white pieces to convert the game basically. So we're talking about this, b3, queen f1, give me the rook, but then after queen c2, knight d3, it's just a matter of time before they even break through and attack your king, right? So in this game, Gulko explains he preferred to simply find a way to keep the position locked so that they cannot attack his king, and that way he could focus on attacking their king on the other side. That's the only way, guys. So in the game, if you pause the video and you found the right continuation, congrats. But in the game, he actually went ahead and took with the bishop, pawn to b3, bishop back to e7, and after pawn takes, knight takes, notice how, yes, we got two bishops for the queen, which is typically not enough, but at the same time, it is just not easy for the white pieces to attack us. And the only hope we have as the black pieces is to actually bring the rook over and continue with our attack on the king side. And I think this part of how to attack their king with only two rooks and two pawns is also very instructive. We've been here many times, and typically our opponent simply blocks, we cannot get in. So this is another opportunity to reinforce those ideas. So anyways, after knight to c4, we got queen to c2, and again, two bishops versus queen. How should we continue? Well, very simple. Next move is just g4. I just need to make contact, expose that king, and hope that my five pieces can work together to checkmate the king. So after pawn to g4, we simply got knight to d3, then rook goes to g8, and then there's a very good question here by Gulko, and the question is, should the white pieces play knight b2 and simplify the game? Now, you and I always talk about, if you're heading material, simplify the game. But in this case, there's a very interesting concept, which is the black pieces have two pieces. It's like you have you have too many pieces, right? So you have two pieces that are fighting for the same square. The knight is very powerful on c4, but at the same time, for this bishop to be powerful, it needs that knight gone. So basically what the white pieces are doing is solving the problem for the black pieces. So knight b2, of course, we take, queen takes, and now we have the powerful bishop open. We have our bishop pretty active as well. And more importantly, we got the two rooks well placed to continue with the pawn storm. Now, don't forget, we had a lesson on how to attack when they have this pawn structure. How do we attack the castle king when they have the pawns next to each other, right? So after queen took on b2, needless to say, we continue with h4, then queen goes to c2, and rook h5. This is not only to double up the rooks in case we have to, but this rook could also go to f5 and put pressure down the f file. So after rook h5, we got rook b1, and here, very careful guys, it's not only about our plans, we also have to be paying attention to what our opponent is trying to do. We gotta be prophylactic. So in this case, the plan is very simple. The white pieces would be happy to play rook b5 so that the bishop cannot act on this diagonal. Even with that sacrifice, They're going to be ahead of immaterial. And at the end of the day, what they want is for the black pieces to not have any chances to checkmate the king. That's the only hope for the black pieces. And with that said, there were some ideas with even playing c4 right away. If you take with the bishop, at some point, I'm going to find ways to sacrifice a rook for the bishop. If you take with the pawn, well, now I can find ways to change the dynamics of the position, right? And this is more interesting than just being passive like happened in the game. So after rook b1, we got bishop c4. Now if they play rook b5, it doesn't really bother us. So bishop c4, rook e3, and now we bring the other bishop that was doing nothing. We bring it to g5. And guys, the white pieces decide to play rook d3. Don't forget, everyone knows this is coming down. And when we open up the king, this bishop is going to be cutting off the white king from running off. So rook d3, asking us to please take the rook. But what we want is to keep the pieces on the board to be able to checkmate the king. If we trade down pieces to win something, we want to win something significant. So instead of taking the rook, we simply have bishop h6. We need the bishop moved out of the g file so that both rooks are open. So after bishop h6, we got rook f1, bringing pieces to defend on the king side. And now, please don't do what many of us do, which is get desperate and we're not patient enough and we just push without really having anything. So instead, Gulko continued with rook f5. We improve our rook, and the white pieces were the ones to get ahead of themselves, and they played g3. Now, don't forget that if you're being attacked like this, you do not want to move pawns on that side of the board because all you do is create weaknesses. When we talked about this, and I think it was lessons 59 through 61 or 62, I told you how to attack when the pawn structure is like this, when the pawn structure is like this, and truth is that the best is this one. This is the most difficult to attack because it takes longer to make contact and they're not weaknesses. These pawns control everything in front of them, so it's not so easy, right? But when the white pieces play g3, automatically the light squares around the king are weak, and it also allows me to open up lines right away. If this ever happens, there are going to be files for my rooks to penetrate. Now, with that said, it's very easy to choose the wrong plan, so I'm going to ask you guys to pause the video and see if you can come up with the best continuation for the black pieces. Now, it is not rook f3. It seems very attractive, but doesn't really do much for you. Instead, we want one of the rooks. Actually, we want both rooks on the h file, right? So we want to start by moving either rook h8 or rook h5 in order to attack down the h file. And of course, h takes g3 is coming. If they take us, let's say my rooks are here, even cooler because then the bishop could get to f4 and that's one more piece to attack. Now, in the game, rook h8 was played. The main reason why we use the rook on the 8th rank is because this one is really active. It's putting pressure on f2. It is ready to come over to h5 anytime. So we use this one that is a little bit more passive, right? So rook h8, now rook d1, and of course, both rooks are now on the h file. If you don't open it for me now, I'm going to go ahead and open it myself. So at this point, we have queen e2, then needless to say, h takes, f takes. And guys, now this is a very important moment in the game. Black to move. How would you continue? Please pretend like you're playing this in a tournament game. You got to this position. How should we continue? Now, I trust that you paused the video and at least considered your candidate moves. But the move, guys, is actually bishop e3. This is a it's not a discovery, it's actually clearance. So you're clearing the file so that the rooks can come down to h2. Now, of course, to get the most out of this game, try to do everything in your head. I'm going to move the pieces, but try to do it in your head first. Bishop e3, if they take here, which is a possibility, we take the queen, they take back. Notice how we're left with 2 rooks versus 2 rooks, but not only are my rooks better coordinated and more active, we are up a pawn. It might not seem like a lot, but it is actually a significant advantage. a4 is hanging, not hanging, it's isolated. This pawn could be a target too, so it should be a way easier endgame for the black pieces. So that variation is okay. If instead they actually capture with the queen, well, we have rook h2, and I know it's not so easy to find because it's not like check, 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 check. But guys, at this point in the course, you should be very comfortable with your ability to visualize, to calculate. If you're not, that means you didn't go step by step. You haven't been putting the time. Queen e3, rook h2, queen g5. Then instead of doing check right away, we're going to take the rook. They take us. Then rook h1, king f2. Rook 8 goes to h2, king e3, rook e1, king f4, and then rook e4, and that is checkmate. Now, feel free to pause the video again and redo everything in your head. Guys, of course, we have to calculate everything else. What if the queen goes instead of g5? What if it goes to f4? What if it goes to d2? What if it goes to c1? If you want, pause the video, try to do it on your own. And lastly, we got to consider, what if they just move to h1? Now, it's not a big deal. We didn't lose any material, but we have to consider it. Now, let me go first over this line, right? So, boom, boom. Now, again, easy, not easy endgame, but better endgame for the black pieces. If instead they take, which is what happened in the game, we got rook h2, queen g5, give me the rook, and when they take back, forcing checkmate, and this is actually the way the game ended. Rook e1, and then checkmate. If you're asking how come a grandmaster didn't see this checkmate coming, probably at this point in the game they were really low on time, guys. Not to mention they were already in pretty bad shape. Now, what if the queen had gone to, let's say, f4? Well, here I think we could just go check, check, and after rook takes rook and they take, this is just checkmate. So it's incredible how these two rooks and the bishop are simply enough to deliver checkmate. Unbelievable. Now, the other thing they could do is something like queen c1, but I think this is simple as well. We just go rook h1 and then we collect the queen. And then there are two other moves that we haven't talked about, guys. And one of them is, well, what if the king just goes to h1? Well, here we just continue putting pressure, something like rook h3. And they are sort of like in suksuan. What could they do, right? If the king moves, skewer. If the queen moves, rook h2. If this rook moves, we take on e2. If this rook moves, well, we take, queen takes, and then we take on h2. So it's just a very nice position for the black pieces. Now, believe it or not, the best move in this position was queen d2. Very counterintuitive. You have to give the queen anyways. And the point is that after rook takes, you simply take back with the rook. And if you look at the eval, yeah, it's roughly equal actually. 0.08 for the black pieces. And the point is, this pawn is going to be always a target. Then we got a pass pawn. But at the end of the day, it's two rooks. And more importantly, the white pieces didn't get checkmated. But again, they were probably really low on time already. And that's a different story. There you go, guys. This is, again, how we go from this position, losing the queen for two minor pieces, and then just focusing on the attack on the king and just being able to make it work. Now, important detail, white pieces shouldn't have solved this problem for the black pieces. The bishop is all of a sudden active, right? Traded, h4, rook h5, bishop c4, active pieces, rook f5, and then this move simply allows the white pieces to get on the h file. Otherwise, they had to find a way to break, and that could lead to the white pieces blocking the position. So g3, come over, bishop e3. You gotta find this move. Yes, at the end of the day, strategy leads to tactics, guys. It leads to tactics. Takes, check, check, and checkmate. Now, in case you're wondering how they got to the initial position that I showed you guys, that position came out of the French defense, and after d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, interesting variation, e5, we got pawn to b6. Now, the idea is very simple in this variation. I just want to play bishop a6 to trade down my light square bishop. Why? Well, all of the pawns in the center for black are on light squares. In the French, this is typically a problem. The bishop is being blocked. It's a bad bishop. So we just want to get it out to a6 and solve that problem.